Revenge with Karen.
At exactly 7:12 a.m. on a Tuesday, Jennifer watched from her phone as the dashboard lit up red, 3 alerts, then 4, then 21. Not her problem anymore. But watching the ship you built start to sink without you? That hits different. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, just sipped her oversteeped green tea and muttered, "Told you not to poke the architect." Let me rewind. For y'all think this is another they fired the wrong person sob story with a happy little HR redemption arc. No, this is about the woman who was the system. The glue. The one they forgot was holding the damn walls up until she stopped showing up, and the walls caved in like a Jenga tower in a wind tunnel. But before the meltdowns and the boardroom whisperings of kill switch, there was Jennifer. Quiet. Ridiculously overqualified, kind of woman who could build a full API routing layer in her sleep and still remember Brenda's birthday in accounting. Jennifer didn't give a damn about recognition. Not really. She wasn't there for the company mugs or the Slack shoutouts with a dancing parrot emoji. What she cared about, deeply, religiously, was clean infrastructure. Systems that hummed. Logs that made sense. Redundancies that worked when no one else thought they would ever need to. Her official title was Director of Operations, but she might as well have been High Priestess of If This Breaks, we're screwed. You ever see someone open a legacy Jenkins node with no notes, no map, and make it sing again? That was Jennifer. She didn't ask for help, didn't need a damn thing but time, silence, and a keyboard. She wrote documentation that made sense, even though she knew nobody would ever read it. She trained the new hires even though she knew they'd quit the second Amazon waved a $20K signing bonus in their face. She fixed outages at 2 a.m. and never logged the hours. And while I've got your attention, yet you, the 1-3 episodes deep on autoplay with crusty coffee and half a mind on Slack, hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and like the story too. Helps more than you know. Keeps the lights on over here. Plus, if you've ever had a clueless exec try to gaslight you about tone, you're going to want to see how this ends. Anyway, back to Jennifer. She was walking the intern, Dylan, through the client provisioning flow one afternoon when she heard it, through the thin-ass walls of the open concept dungeon they called a collaboration space. 2 suits in the corner were realigning the operations org. Gotta flatten the stack, get some redundancy out of there. The other one laughed. Yeah, start with the dinosaurs. Some of that code's older than my daughter, then more snickering and the slap of a whiteboard marker hitting glass. Jennifer said nothing, didn't twitch, just tapped a few keys and pulled up her oh shit folder. It had a real name, of course, in for Transition Notes V8, but the gist was simple. Everything she knew, documented, synced, versioned, and backed up in triplicate. Because one day, someone would be stupid enough to think they could replace her with a Slack bot and a self-serve dashboard. And when that day came, she wanted her exit clean, surgical, untouchable. Dylan didn't notice her shift in tone, so that endpoint just returns the invoice object, he asked. She nodded, typing one-handed while spinning up a secure repo in the background. If the system trusts you, yeah, he laughed. Well, good thing we're trustworthy. Jennifer didn't laugh. Not even close. That week, the CFO stopped replying to her update emails. Meetings she used to run suddenly had new owners. A weird little project called Ops Vision 2025 got shared with her by accident, twice. And every time she flagged a broken dependency or a billing issue caused by the migration plan, she got the same Slack reply. Thanks, we'll review. They never did. She'd seen it happen before, especially in companies run by legacy nepotism. Golden boy screws up the finances or forgets a licensing renewal, and suddenly you're the reason morale's down. She wasn't even mad, just tired in her bones. She didn't want to fight it, didn't want to prove herself anymore. She just wanted the backup files clean and the receipts in place. By Friday, someone had started replacing her name on system tickets with a bot account. Jennifer smiled at that, not because it hurt, because it was cute, like watching a toddler try to drive a forklift. The intern noticed her smiling at her screen. You good? She turned to him, just remembering something I should have deleted years ago. Because here's the thing about being indispensable. They only realize it after they've told you to make room for someone with fresh perspective. And by then, it's already too late. It started with a Slack ping. Just one. From a thread she wasn't tagged in but got wind of through the grapevine. Because in companies like this, gossip travels faster than Jira tickets. Hey team, looks like the billing config for the Grayson account was botched. At Jennifer, can you confirm you didn't modify the provisioning template before handoff? The sender? Tyler. Junior Exec Strategic Accounts, also known as Tyler, the CFO's nephew. A walking resume of empty buzzwords and pastel button-ups, fresh off some MBA farm where emotional leadership was a full credit course. Been shadowing operations for 3 months and had already managed to break 2 billing cycles and accidentally delete a test environment thinking it was a sandbox game server. Jennifer stared at the message like it was a dead rat on a salad plate. There had been no handoff. The Grayson account had been moved prematurely by Tyler himself, against her direct instructions in the shared change log. She had documented it, timestamped it, iterated it twice in the ops channel in plain corporate-proof English. This account is not ready for migration until the billing bridge is patched. ETA 3 days. But now, there it was. A public finger point from Tyler, with just enough plausible deniability to make her look like the one who dropped the ball. She clicked into the thread, started to reply, then stopped. She reread it, once, twice. Closed the tab. An hour later, HR emailed her. Hey Jennifer, mind popping into a quick sync tomorrow at 9? Some team dynamics stuff to align on. No subject line, no detail. Just that cryptic corporate bullshit tone that always meant, we're not firing you, but we're about to destroy your career and call it a realignment. She didn't respond right away. Just turned her chair slowly and looked out the floor-ceiling window of the open-plan office. Rain. The kind that soaked through your shoes and crept up your spine. It had rained the day she joined the company 7 years ago, too. The next morning, she walked into the HR sync with her laptop, a copy of the Grayson thread, the billing log PDF, and her face set like stone. It wasn't a sync. It was a setup. 3 people in the room, Marcy from HR, a senior HR partner who once mistook Jennifer for the front desk rep, Lucas from People Ops, who only ever spoke in LinkedInisms, and surprise guest, CFO Mark, Tyler's uncle, seated like a bored executioner checking his email between beheadings. Jennifer sat down without a word. Jennifer, Marcy began, overly cheery like she'd just eaten a Xanax with her breakfast burrito, we've received some concerns from leadership about how you've been communicating with other departments, specifically around tone. Jennifer blinked. Tone. Yes, Lucas chimed in. Some colleagues feel that your written communication style could be perceived as undermining to collaborative morale. She let the silence sit. Let them stew in it, then slowly pulled up the Slack thread. You mean this one, where Tyler asked me to confirm a mistake he made himself? Lucas fidgeted. This isn't about assigning blame. Interesting, Jennifer said flatly, because Tyler assigned it already, publicly. CFO Mark finally looked up, just briefly, went back to his phone like he was scrolling a wine list. Marcy tried a tight smile. We're not trying to target anyone, Jen. We're just trying to ensure a healthy environment for the whole team. There's been some chatter about negativity, especially in ops. We need to model resilience, not resistance. And there it was. The corporate poetry of blame, distilled into HR jargon. We need to make an example out of you, so the rest of them fall in line. Jennifer sat still. So still that Marcy actually leaned in slightly, as if trying to see if she was okay. But Jennifer's mind wasn't in that room anymore. It was already back at her desk, downloading logs, copying architecture notes, pulling her own documentation from the internal wiki before it mysteriously got archived during the upcoming transition. She didn't respond, just nodded once, stood up, and said, "Thanks for the clarity." As she left, CFO Mark stepped into the elevator with her. They stood in silence, awkward and close. He didn't look at her, not once. Just fiddled with his AirPods case like it was made of gold and regret. She said nothing. But inside her chest, something old cracked open. Not grief, not even anger, it was betrayal. Slow and quiet, the kind you only feel when you realize they were always going to do this. You just didn't know when. Back at her desk, she didn't cry and curse. Just created a new encrypted repo and titled it Deadman Switch V1, and she got to work. The email arrived at 3:14 p.m., timestamped like a death certificate. Subject, Morale Alignment Video Session, invite attached. A Word doc titled Jennifer Statement Final V2. DocX, as if this was a group project she'd failed to contribute to. The body of the email was painfully neutral, the kind of tone HR consultants must practice in front of mirrors. As part of our commitment to workplace culture, we're asking for a short acknowledgement to be recorded for internal training purposes. Your cooperation is appreciated. Training purposes. They may as well have slapped her face on a dartboard. She opened the document and read the words aloud. barely audible in her apartment above the laundromat. I understand that my communication may have unintentionally caused disruption in team morale. I take full responsibility and remain committed to fostering an environment of collaboration and mutual respect. Mutual respect. Like the CFO not even making eye contact while his nephew threw her under the bus. Like getting ambushed in a meeting labeled a sink. Like building the ops foundation of this damn company only to be paraded like a scapegoat in front of an HR ring light. The part that made her laugh, actually laugh, was the last line. We appreciate Jennifer's continued contributions and trust this clears the air for everyone. Like a hostage thanking their captors for the hospitality. The shoot was scheduled for the next morning in a sad little wellness nook on the 4th floor that hadn't seen a potted plant in 6 months. Set it up like a fake therapy office. Beige armchair, ring light, a tripod with a crusty Logitech webcam, and a borrowed company laptop that booted up like it hated being alive. Marcy from HR was already there, holding a clipboard she didn't need and sipping something smug from a branded coffee tumbler. CFO Mark came in 2 minutes late and stood behind the ring light like a silent warden, arms folded, eyes on nothing in particular. Jennifer sat down, no small talk, no fake niceties. Marcy smiled tightly. Let's just do a quick read-through. One take should be fine. We're not expecting perfection, just sincerity. Jennifer adjusted the mic. You'll get something. The laptop's red recording dot blinked on. She read the entire script without blinking. Word for word, not a tremor in her voice. Her hands, folded in her lap, were still as concrete. She didn't rush, didn't flinch. Just as she reached the last line, she let the air sit for a moment. 2 seconds, 3, then she added one more line, calmly, clearly, like it had always been there. I hope we mirror our stated values across all environments, especially the buried ones. Marcy blinked. The smile twitched, just once. Behind her, the CFO said nothing. No movement, but Jennifer could feel it. Barely perceptible stillness of someone suddenly unsure if the gun on the table was loaded. She waited half a beat, then leaned forward and clicked stop recording. As she stood, she noticed a second window behind the webcam software flicker and vanish in a blink. It had been hidden in the system tray, just a narrow console pane showing server activity. Most wouldn't have seen it, most wouldn't have cared. But Jennifer did, because she recognized the exact timestamp and signature. Her remote backup demon quietly syncing, not sabotage, just observation. She hadn't triggered it, not today, but it ran weekly and today happened to be Thursday. She looked at Marcy. Need anything else? No, that was great. Thanks so much, Jennifer. The CFO stepped aside without speaking as she passed. He looked at his phone like it owed him a different reality. Jennifer walked out of the fake office like it wasn't real, like none of it was real. But in her mind, she was already visualizing the node tree, the old backup architecture that no one had touched in months. The keys still tied to her user ID, never decommissioned because we'll get to it. They never got to it. On the way out, she passed the glass-walled exec lounge. Tyler was inside, mansplaining something to a cluster of junior staffers who nodded too hard and laughed too loud. He caught her eye for a fraction of a second and gave her the half-smile of someone who thinks they've won. Jennifer didn't break stride. Back at her desk, she unplugged her monitor, wrapped her chargers neatly, slipped her backup drives into a cloth case she always kept in the bottom drawer. Then she opened one terminal window, typed 5 commands, and hit enter. Nothing dramatic, just a light nudge to an environment they'd forgotten she had access to. Then she picked up her bag and walked out. No goodbye, no circle back, no Slack status update. But somewhere, silently, a system no one had monitored in months blinked awake and began listening again. Jennifer left the building that evening the same way she'd entered it 7 years ago, alone, unnoticed, and carrying a laptop bag that held far more than anyone realized. No send-off, no HR escort, no box of succulents and stolen pens. Just a woman walking into the parking garage with a full backup of the company's operational soul, zipped into a drive so small it could be mistaken for a key fob. Her car didn't beep when she unlocked it. She disabled the chirp months ago, too loud, too obvious. Same reason she didn't update her LinkedIn. Let them wonder. Let them pretend things were normal. She drove 6 miles to a co-working space she'd used off and on over the years. Quiet, barely staffed, full of freelancers with headphones bigger than their rent payments. She checked in under the name Jan M. and picked a corner booth facing the window. By 6:58 a.m., she had tea in one hand and her laptop open on the other. A sticky note covered the webcam. Her screen was dark except for one monitoring dashboard, private Grafana instance no one at the company even knew existed. It watched all the things they stopped caring about once the flashy cloud dashboards came in. Packet latency, queue lengths, internal failover handshakes. She didn't touch the keyboard. She just watched. At 7:04 a.m. Eastern, the first alert lit up in yellow. Billing node 1 no response, 3 seconds later. Billing node 2 request timeout, 10 seconds later. Queue server legacy hung thread. Transaction lock by 7:06 a.m. The CRM system threw a fatal error trying to reach the payment confirmation API. By 7:07, that same API went dark. By 7:09, the Salesforce integration failed, cascading into the exec dashboard, stopped showing Q4 projections, and started flashing 0.00 across every pipeline widget like a digital obituary. At 7:12, the panic began. A sales rep in Boston posted anyone else seeing blank invoices in hash client support. By 7:15, the channel had 38 messages. By 7:17, someone from the European team tagged at ops, and then at all. By 7:20, the Slack thread read like the opening scene of a disaster movie. CRM's down. I can't pull contracts. Client says their card was charged twice, no refund. Dashboard's blank. Everything's red. Where is Jennifer? But Jennifer wasn't there. She was across town, sipping tea from a chipped mug with a picture of a goose in sunglasses, and watching. She wasn't smiling. Not really. That wasn't her style. But there was a peace behind her eyes, exhale that had waited years to surface. Let the servers scream. At 7:24, someone in legal received an automated compliance digest email, a legacy process that hadn't been disabled because no one remembered how. It came from no reply at internal NotifyNet and included an error log from a node labeled redundant archive 3040com, except it wasn't redundant. And it wasn't decommissioned. Jennifer had kept it alive in shadow, barely enough resources to tick, but enough to witness. That node had one job: watch, log, mirror, and this morning it logged everything. The failed pings, the corrupted backups, the desperate reboots, the conflicting permission keys issued to accounts that shouldn't have existed. At 7:29, the node sent one last packet before going quiet. Inside was a compressed error report with 5 years of system notes. It included a snapshot of the infrastructure tree, one Jennifer had built herself, slowly, piece by piece, because nobody else knew how to connect the billing layer to the compliance audit rail without breaking the whole thing. And in the footer of the log, a warning: primary key mismatch, admin signature missing, recovery protocol undefined, legal called IT called the CTO called the CFO, no one called Jennifer. By 7:45, internal access to the core dashboard was revoked for all non-admin users. By 7:52, an emergency meeting invite went out with the subject: urgent. System-wide outage revenue impact. Jennifer's phone buzzed once. She didn't check it. Instead, she leaned back and opened a second tab, an encrypted folder filled with architecture diagrams, password hashes, version logs, and annotated screenshots titled, "Just in case." And in a subfolder, original Slack export where Tyler blamed her. Just sitting there, quietly, waiting, she closed the laptop. Outside, the morning traffic buzzed. Inside the company, nothing moved. At 8:02 a.m., the ops war room came online, just not the way they'd rehearsed in tabletop drills. No pizza. No fake scenario cards. Just panic in Dockers and whispers that sounded way too much like prayers. Monitors blinked like strobes, status pages froze. The Slack channels multiplied like rabbits in a thunderstorm. Inside the glass cube conference room, dubbed Innovation HQ, because some sadist thought naming it that would boost morale, 7 people stood around one too small table, all breathing through their mouths. "Where the hell is the documentation?" barked Amir, the new director of cloud transformation. He had been at the company for 5 weeks and already ordered new office furniture, built 3 automations he didn't understand, and bragged about how his last company went full serverless by accident and still survived. Now, his hands were trembling above the keyboard. They tried to access the legacy billing environment, first through their new AWS console, then through the proxy, then by pulling the last cached credential from an out-of-date Chrome profile someone remembered Jennifer using once. Every single attempt hit a wall. 403 permission denied, error. Invalid admin signature, error. Session key expired, contact primary maintainer, contact who? The CTO, Jim, stood near the back wall, arms folded so tight it looked like he was hugging himself to keep from exploding. Try the secondary fallback. The old GCP instance. Jennifer had it configured before the migration. A junior engineer named Lewis tried. That node's not active. It's not on our billing list. I think it was deprecated last year. It wasn't, Jim muttered. It was put in maintenance mode. Tyler requested it be removed to cut costs. Lewis turned pale. So what do we have access to? Asked the chief of strategy, who had no clue what any of these words meant, but had been yelling impact and visibility in increasingly shrill tones. Marcy from HR, now forcibly looped into the ops call for some god-forsaken reason, tried to contribute. Is there any chance this was caused by emotional interference? Like burnout sabotage? Jim didn't answer. He was staring at a transition memo from 6 months ago. He'd never read it. None of them had. Titled, Legacy Environment Final Redundancy Transition Timeline. Author, Jennifer A. Langston. Status, unreviewed, priority tag, low. He clicked open the document, heart thudding like a bad drumline. Inside was a precise outline of how to migrate the billing systems cleanly without breaking backward compatibility. Notes on failover logic, admin key rotation, version snapshots, everything they needed. And every section began with the same note, must be confirmed with IT and legal by Q2 deadline. They never confirmed, never followed up. Because Tyler, had marked it low priority after a Friday all-hands where he claimed everything was already cloud-native and fully future-proofed. He'd even posted a meme about deleting legacy tech and freeing up brain bandwidth. Now, that bandwidth was screaming. Worse still, the encrypted credential vault Jennifer had maintained. It was still live, buried deep in the intranet under a page labeled Deprecated Systems Notes. Vault required biometric confirmation tied to her old laptop, which was gone. So they tried backup passwords, shared admin keys. The CTO even called an old contractor in Florida who used to work on the audit layer. Every path dead-ended with the same prompt. Signature mismatch maintainer override required. That's when they realized something bone-deep and cold. No one actually knew how any of it worked. Sure, they knew the diagrams. The surface-level dashboards. A fresh coat of paint Jennifer had been forced to slap on outdated systems, so Tyler could take screenshots for board presentations. But the real guts, the ugly, clunky, interdependent legacy mess she duct-taped together over 7 years of tech debt and executive amnesia. Only Jennifer knew that, and she was gone. Across town, she was watching it unfold in terminal logs. Calm, detached, like a scientist observing a failed simulation. There was no glee, no champagne, no dramatic music swelling in the background, just a sense of grim inevitability. She scrolled through the sync report from the dead node that triggered the legal alert. Every error told a story, a missed review, a delayed upgrade, an overwritten credential, a skipped QBR. She had warned them, again and again. But they didn't listen. They didn't want expertise. They wanted compliance. Smiles in meetings, someone to nod along and make it all look easy while they chased their fake cloud-native dream. And now the dream was eating itself. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dylan, the intern. Everything's broken. Are you okay? She typed, paused, then backspaced. Finally, she wrote, I'm safe, you? He replied instantly. They just asked if I know where your documentation is. Jennifer smiled for the first time that day. Not a big smile, not triumphant. Just enough. He set her tea down, opened a new window, and waited. The board briefing was scheduled for 10:30 a.m., but by 10:07, the CFO was already sweating through his collar in the main conference room. Not the big, performative innovation space with mood lighting and fake ficuses, but the war room version with 2 legal pads, 3 redacted emails, and 5 very pale faces. They hadn't prepared slides. There was nothing to present, just a string of unanswered questions and a single uncomfortable certainty. Nothing was working. Revenue streams, frozen, client access, broken, system access, denied, and behind it all, a ghost, a name no one wanted to say aloud in case she somehow heard them through the air vents. Jennifer Langston, the woman they forced to apologize on camera for tone issues. Now, they couldn't even find her email in the employee directory. The CTO had to speak first. His voice was quiet. Not sheepish, more like stunned. We're locked out of critical infrastructure. There's no full access key currently active. There's no up-to-date credential trail. The last one still technically valid is he looked down at the paper. Jennifer's, the board chair, an older man who usually only stirred when dividends were mentioned, blinked slowly. She was terminated, yes. Mark, the CFO, cleared his throat. Not exactly terminated. She wasn't fired. Char had her record a morale apology. She left voluntarily after that. You mean she walked? She walked. And you didn't revoke her access? She was admin on legacy systems. I assumed it was symbolic access at that point. She hadn't used it in months. Legal cut in. A woman named Priya, sharp as a tack and 10 times as tired. We've found a signed access control exception form dated April. Lists Jennifer Langston as the emergency override admin for the legacy environment under the compliance continuity clause. Signed by her and by you, Mark. The CFO turned gray. That was a precaution. Did you ever revoke it? It was set to auto-expire at quarter close. Priya tapped her screen. It didn't. No revocation trail. No notification. And since her exit was technically voluntary, IT never triggered a full decommissioning process. The room went very, very still. So, said the board chair, folding his hands, you gave her the kill switch and then forgot she had it. Mark tried to stammer something about redundancies and transition teams, but it came out like a dying fish gasping in a bathtub. Meanwhile, Priya pulled up the compliance protocol binder, the real one, not the glossy PDF in the onboarding portal. Page 274, Emergency Access Delegation Retention and Revocation Policy, highlighted in green. In the event of voluntary separation, emergency admin credentials must be manually revoked by the delegating officer. They looked at the signature block. Delegating officer, Mark E. Heller, CFO Jesus, someone muttered. Across town, Jennifer sat in her corner booth with the same cup of now lukewarm tea. Her laptop chirped once. A new notification. Request. Short-term consulting engagement priority. Critical. From interim VP operations, subject. Urgent. System recovery. She stared at the message. No greeting, no apology, just urgency. She didn't open it. Didn't click the calendar invite attached. Instead, she pulled up her terminal and watched a few pings bounce. Her old failover demon had kicked in, trying to reroute payment events. But without the right keys, it was like a fire alarm ringing inside a sealed bank vault. Loud, useless, unacknowledged. Logs were clean. Jennifer always kept them clean. She knew where the broken handoffs would happen. Knew what they'd try next, rebooting containers, running rollback scripts on versions they didn't understand, pulling backups that hadn't been validated since last Christmas. She knew they'd call soon. Maybe not her directly. Maybe Dylan. Maybe someone from HR pretending to check in. Maybe legal. Laying the friendly hand card before the board decided whether this mess had legal implications tied to negligence. Jennifer opened her email. Dozens of unread messages now. Most urgent. Some panicked. Then one caught her eye, from Dylan R. Subject, are you okay? They're freaking out. She smiled, genuinely this time. Just for a moment. Typed back, I'm fine, don't volunteer for anything, not yet. Her phone buzzed again. Another email, subject, can we talk? Just 5 minutes from Mark, the CFO. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened her private note log and scrolled to April. Screenshot of the access control form, her name, his signature, the date. She added one line below it. They never read the fine print. And then she closed the tab, because it wasn't over yet. But it was about to get interesting. By noon, the so-called collapse protocol was underway. Slapdash emergency response plan duct-taped together from 3 abandoned IT documents, 2 Slack screenshots, and the desperate hope that someone somewhere still had a working backup. They assembled a task force, ops, legal, finance, a few sleep-deprived engineers, and one poor intern drafted to take notes like this was some kind of productive offsite instead of a full-blown code-base exorcism. The first hour was spent trying to boot the primary recovery image. It failed, checksum mismatch. The second hour, trying to restore from last week's hot backup on the cloud environment. Failed again. Version conflict. By hour 3, panic started whispering through the cables. Because the backups weren't just broken. They were out of sync, out of date, and in some cases completely mislabeled, thanks to a brilliant initiative months ago from Tyler, who had renamed key nodes to make them friendlier for new hires. One backup directory was literally called Narnia. Another, do not delete legacy final v2. They tried that one. It contained a 10-second video of Tyler explaining his vision for decentralized ops over a loop of royalty-free ukulele music. Someone threatened to punch a wall. Meanwhile, the system's error logs were now coughing up something even worse than silence: conflict. Data was trying to route through 6 different deprecated bridges, all of them still half alive, like zombie limbs twitching under the floorboards. One bridge in particular, Auth v1 router alt, should have been killed off 2 years ago, was suddenly spitting out malformed API calls. The source, an API key, active, still authenticated, belonging to Jennifer A. Langston. The room went dead quiet when that popped up on the screen. "Is she doing this live?" someone asked, voice trembling. But the logs didn't lie. Key wasn't sending active instructions. It was responding, pinged by systems trying to fail over to a maintainer node that no longer existed. And since her ID was still marked as a valid override from the access control list, the internal logic had defaulted to her route. Like a thermostat calling the old homeowner to ask what temperature it should be. "She's not hacking anything," the CTO muttered, pale now. "It's not sabotage. It's obedience. System is literally just doing what it was trained to do." The legacy billing module, failing its modern counterpart, had crawled backwards through its own logs until it found the last stable route, which pointed to Jennifer's redundant node, the one no one had taken seriously, the one Mark himself had authorized as temporary, then forgotten. Now, it was the only functioning route in the entire infrastructure map. But because Jennifer had walked, because the decryption key was tied to her laptop's TPM chip, none of the payloads could complete. It was like having the right key but the wrong door. And then things got worse. Lewis, the junior engineer who'd been quietly combing through Slack archives, let out a noise somewhere between a cough and a confession. "I found something." He turned his laptop toward legal. It was a Slack thread, 3 months old, the day after a compliance audit. "Mark, let's just patch the legacy billing and give Jennifer temp override until the new ops guy is up to speed." "Tyler, cool. I'll remove her from the new dashboard so it doesn't confuse anyone." "Mark, just keep it quiet. Legal's nervous about continuity stuff." And beneath that, a reaction emoji from Jennifer. The eyes emoji. She had seen it, read it, logged it, and then built accordingly. Priya from legal pinched the bridge of her nose so hard it looked like she was trying to erase her face. "This is liability. This is negligence documented in writing." "Is that Slack export protected?" Jim asked. Priya nodded slowly. "Not anymore." They looked at the screen, at the logs, at the mess. Then, quietly, the intern Dylan, drafted from summer projects and now marooned in the apocalypse, raised his hand like a kid in math class. "I worked with Jennifer for a few weeks. She mentioned that systems only listen to people they trust. That trust is granted, not assumed." They all blinked at him. "She said a system's loyalty is earned," Dylan added, "and that you can't override trust with titles." The CTO nodded grimly. "Yeah, that sounds like her." Outside, the world kept spinning. Clients were still calling. Transactions were still failing. Refunds were bottlenecked in a purgatory of broken endpoints. Somewhere, in a basement data center 2 time zones away, a server fan screamed like a banshee trying to warn the living. Across town, Jennifer refreshed her terminal window and saw the malformed pings. She knew what they were: desperate cries from a system looking for home. She didn't reply, didn't intervene, because they hadn't just broken her trust. They trained the system to trust her, and then ignored every warning she gave. Now it was listening the only way it knew how, by refusing to hear anyone else. At 2:41 p.m., the door to Legal's archive room slammed open so hard it rattled the disaster recovery binders. Priya stormed in like a woman possessed, muttering to herself and dragging a wheeled file case behind her like a casket. She was done waiting on IT exports, done hoping that someone on the ops team had tagged the right compliance logs. Now she was going old school, dead trees and dust. She pulled down the quarterly risk binder from Q2, thick as a phone book and twice as outdated. Inside, physical copies of every signed override, every elevated access grant, every system-level exception tagged under business continuity. She flipped past dozens of pages, some flagged with post-its, others crumpled like someone had once spilled kombucha on them. And then, finally, she found it. Form 9B. Emergency System Level Override Authorization Name. Langston, Jennifer A. Access Level. Root Admin Legacy Architecture Stack. Date issued: April 17. Delegated by Mark E. Heller, CFO. Status: active pending quarterly review. Priya closed her eyes. Because according to policy, every override had to be re-reviewed at the start of each quarter. Not digitally acknowledged. Signed. By legal ops, the original delegating officer. And Mark hadn't done it. Worse, he had submitted a compliance summary report stating that all overrides were reviewed and updated as required. He lied, or worse, he didn't even realize he'd lied. She walked the binder into the boardroom like it was a murder weapon, set it down in front of Mark without a word. He looked at it, confused at first, then saw his own signature. And the timestamp, the field that read, next review required, July 1. He whispered, "Oh no." Priya didn't speak. Just flipped to the next page, the compliance checklist, box unchecked. I assumed it auto-revoked," he stammered. Priya snapped the binder shut. "You assumed wrong." HR, looped into the call remotely, tried to pivot. Maybe we should focus on recovery instead of blame, but it was too late. The junior exec, Tyler, was already gone. Let go quietly, as they say, which really meant his badge was deactivated and his Slack profile deleted before anyone could send a GIF. Official reason? Restructuring. Unofficial. The board wasn't about to let the CFO's nephew be the face of the most expensive operational failure in the company's history. Mark tried to get ahead of it. Sent Jennifer an email that evening. Subject: Consulting opportunity still open. We're hoping to move forward together in a productive way. Team would love to reconnect. Jennifer didn't respond, but she saw the read receipt on her original reply. Viewed at 3:14 p.m. Location: executive floor. Another email followed, this one from HR, just checking in to see if you'd be open to a chat, even informally. She left it unread. At 4:07 p.m., a post hit LinkedIn. Screenshot only. No caption. The image, a photograph of the override form, her name. His signature. Phrase pending review underlined in red. Nobody claimed it. No watermark, no attribution. But within an hour, it was trending. System failure at scale. Why compliance is more than paperwork, root access, and corporate amnesia. A case study. Who holds the kill switch? Apparently, not the board. Internal Slack lit up. Someone in sales pinged legal. Did Jennifer leak that? Someone from IT replied. If she did, can we hire her back? Jennifer watched the chaos from her screen. Didn't interact. Just monitored the breach reports and the noise. Every email she didn't reply to landed with a weight heavier than any response. The silence was its own message. You don't get to ask me now. You had your chance when I was documenting everything, warning everyone, offering transitions and timelines and training. But you wanted obedience. You got absence instead. And now, finally, you're listening. There's nothing left to say. The boardroom was so quiet you could hear the HVAC system trying to keep the illusion of control alive. Phones were face down. Laptops closed. No one dared tap a key. They all stared at the screen mounted on the wall, once the pride of quarterly updates and investor calls. Now a flickering black void with a single message stuttering across it in failing font. Connection lost. For a moment, no one moved. Not even to breathe. Blinking might make it worse. Then the screen went dark entirely. The CFO, Mark, stood closest to the display. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His tie was crooked now, his shirt half untucked, and the confidence he wore like a badge all these years had drained out of him like air from a slit tire. Finally, he managed a whisper, brittle and hoarse. Who gave her the kill switch? There was a pause, long enough to hear someone's watch beep the top of the hour. Junior legal assistant, fresh out of school, drafted into the room because no one higher up wanted to face the fallout, cleared her throat gently. She held a binder in one hand, one of those big compliance monsters with plastic tabs and coffee stains from a dozen forgotten crises. She didn't look up when she answered. Just flipped to the page she had bookmarked with a trembling finger. You did, she said softly. Last April. It's in the binder. No one spoke after that, because there was nothing left to say. Not when the backup routes had failed. Not when the logs showed a perfect, lawful, procedural chain of access tied to Jennifer Langston. Not when every failover module, every emergency routine, every alert script, all of it had pointed to one thing: the system obeyed her. And now it had finally let go. Somewhere across town, in that same co-working booth with the chipped goose mug and the humming fluorescent light, Jennifer's laptop gave a soft ping. She glanced at the screen. One notification. Subject: access revoked, session terminated. Body: your administrator role has been formally retired. Thank you for your service. That was it. 7 years, countless nights. One apology video. and a single packet of code she never meant as revenge, but which served as the most honest eulogy a system could deliver: absence. She closed the laptop with both hands, slowly, like sealing a box. No smirk, no grand toast, no villain monologue, just an exhale, deep, final. The kind that doesn't need a second breath. She stood up, grabbed her bag, left the mug behind. Back in the boardroom, the door creaked open. No one looked up. But when they finally did, after the silence stretched too long and the shock curdled into confusion, they found something new on the table. A single sheet of paper, no folder, no memo. Just a printout, plain, unmistakable. Form 9B, Emergency System Level Override Authorization, Maintainer, Jennifer A. Langston signed, Mark E. Heller, CFO, countersigned, dated, highlighted, left there anonymously, no note, no fingerprints. Just the cold, bureaucratic truth: she didn't pull the kill switch. They gave it to her. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.